The bridge of the justified overkill was a marvel of overcompensation. 4 stories of polished obsidian alloy, crystalline control terminals, and command chairs woven from the hides of extinct ceremonial beasts. It hovered in high orbit over Theta 9, a formerly human colony and, until 10 hours ago, a boring diplomatic outpost. Now it was on fire. Commander Kriv, six-eyed bureaucrat extraordinaire and second most unpleasant being in his family tree, paced the central command ramp with measured indignation. The air tasted like ionized metal and recycled anxiety. The crew worked in near silence, because Kriv's version of leadership involved unpredictable throat-clicking and a strong tendency to vaporize underperformers. Then the door to the bridge burst open. A junior officer, species uncertain, somewhere between amphibian and pure stress, tumbled in, panting, eyes wide. "You idiot!" it shrieked, pointing a trembling claw at Kriv. "You stole a Navy SEAL's child." Time froze. Somewhere near the ventilation shaft, a sound technician dropped his drink. The ship's AI stuttered mid-sentence and had to reboot. Even the semi-sentient chair cushions deflated in horror. Kriv blinked once. Twice. His throat made a sound like a drowning blender. "I beg your pardon," he said slowly, with the vocal quality of a planet preparing to sue an asteroid. The officer was already sliding down the wall, clutching their datapad like a holy relic. Sector-wide broadcast. Human military distress code. Level Omega. That's a retrieval tag, used only if a special warfare child is extracted without protocol. The code's been dark for decades. Until now. Kriv turned toward the central holoscreen, gesturing sharply. "Show me." The screen shimmered into life. There, in crisp Terran type, was the message that made every single being in the bridge want to evacuate their digestive systems. Retrieval priority. Vance. K. Response authority. Mason Vance. SEAL/Tier 1 operator/retired. Engagement status. Non-negotiable. Kriv's throat clicked again. "Retired," he said, hopeful. "He's not retired," the junior officer whispered. "He's resting. There's a difference." The silence that followed could have shattered moons. The justified overkill, the pride of the Galactic Abduction and Resource Integration Fleet, had a problem. A small one, roughly 3 feet tall, with blonde curls and a habit of humming when bored. She currently sat cross-legged in cell block E19, doodling on the wall with a crayon she hadn't been given. 3 guards had tried to enter the room. 1 vomited. 1 wet himself. The 3rd now sat in the infirmary repeating the word "smile" over and over. No physical harm. No contact. Just eye contact. Extended. Too extended. Kriv, against better judgment, pulled up the surveillance feed. The girl sat in the middle of the room. Come. Her drawing now showed what looked like a fish wearing sunglasses. Under it, in crayon, it read, "My dad's coming." The feed shimmered, then cut to static. Kriv turned to the command AI. "Where is the father?" The AI hesitated, an impressive feat for a consciousness that lived inside 300 processors and a pride complex. "He appears to have vanished." Kriv's pupils narrowed. Define vanished. His residence was abandoned. Gear locker, empty. Vehicle, missing. Local security attempted a search but were preemptively disarmed. By whom? By Mr. Vance, sir. The officer who had delivered the news let out a strangled sob. Kriv turned and addressed the bridge. "This is a minor complication. We are the Galactic Empire. We do not negotiate with primitive protein shooters." On cue, a new alert chimed. Incoming transmission. Unknown vessel. No IDEN code. Manual signal. Direct broadcast. The screen flickered. A man appeared. Mid-40s. Weathered. Broad shoulders. Dark beard. Unflinching eyes. He sat on what looked like a metal crate. There was no insignia behind him. No badge. Just the low hum of an engine and the ghost of a desert wind. He looked directly into the camera. "Return my daughter," he said, voice calm as dawn. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just waited. The signal cut. The bridge erupted. He's tracked us. He's here. Kriv bared his fangs. Silence. He's one man. One. He's that one, muttered someone near the back. Another officer pulled up known data on Mason Vance. 127 confirmed missions. 0 failed. Known for operating behind enemy lines without support. Last seen retiring in the Terran backwoods, rumored to be building furniture and breaking steel with his elbows. I want every drone armed, Kriv snapped. Flood the lower decks with knock gas. Seal the control rooms. Find him before. The lights dimmed. Then turned red. Deck B-17 vented into space. Kriv turned to the AI. Report. He's inside. In the ship. In the walls. Elsewhere, in one of the lower maintenance shafts, Mason Vance moved like breath through fog. He carried no heavy pack. No helmet. Just a cloth-wrapped rifle and the kind of expression that makes a professional killer hesitate. He passed a guard. The guard blinked. When they opened their eyes, Vance was already gone. But the guard's rifle had been taken apart and reassembled backwards. Vance reached a vent grate. Slid it open. Inside was a small button. His daughter had left it, a breadcrumb. One of several. He allowed himself the smallest smile. Then vanished into shadow. Back on the bridge, Kriv was consulting with his war council. I want strike teams in every hallway. Deploy the shriekers. Activate all psychic sentries. Already done, said a nervous slug-shaped admiral. But sir, he's not attacking. Kriv froze. What do you mean? He's not killing anyone. He's walking through them. He disables, redirects, and leaves notes. Always the same note. She hums in C-sharp. The bridge doors hissed open, and in walked Lieutenant Zeller of the Command Detention Division, with a limp and haunted eyes. I tried to talk to her, he said softly. She offered me a drawing. I said no. And? Kriv asked, exasperated. She just looked at me, then said, he's not angry yet. There was a beat, then a tremor. A literal one, somewhere in the aft hangar. Explosions. No. Power rerouted. Lockdown overridden. By whom? No one knew. The girl's cell was now empty. Her drawing remained. Updated. This one showed a man holding hands with a small girl. Around them were stars. Beneath it, one word, written in careful crayon. Soon. Kriv turned to his second-in-command. Raise every alert. Bring in the Bounty Guild. Call the insect assassins. I want this human erased. And the girl. He hesitated. Then, return her unharmed. Alive. With honor. And with cookies. I hear they like those. The crew rushed to obey, tripping over one another to avoid being near Kriv's murderous silence. In the depths of the ship, Vance paused. He could feel the rhythm of the ship, its pulse, its weak points. He was close now. Every turn carried her scent. Every corner bore her little signs. She wasn't just leaving a trail. She was waiting. He touched the cold wall. Whispered, Daddy's coming. Up on the bridge, the AI stuttered again. Not from fear, but from logic error. Because for the first time in recorded history, it had no countermeasure. No recommendation. No plan. Only a line of text, repeating over and over in the mainframe. You shouldn't have taken her. Kriv, pale now, stared out the viewport into the black void beyond. This was supposed to be a simple abduction, he muttered. And behind him, a single word burned across the holoscreen. Retribution. The desert wind moved like breath across bone. Quiet. Relentless. A whisper over the dry earth that didn't ask permission to strip mountains down to silence. In the distance, somewhere near the old ridgeline that looked like a spine pushed up from the earth, a black pickup truck idled. Dust clung to the tires like bad decisions. The house it faced was plain, whitewashed wood, low roof, porch swing untouched by paint in a decade. A mailbox leaned sideways like it had seen things it wasn't paid to understand. Inside the house, everything was still. Then the comm crackled. Not a standard transmission. Not broadcast. A dead frequency that hadn't hummed since the siege of Halcyon Reef. A burst of sound, then code. 7 numbers. A child's name. A single word after it. Taken. Mason Vance sat at the kitchen table. He didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. He simply reached for the envelope in front of him, unfinished letter, meant for his daughter's birthday. She would have turned 6 next week. His hand hovered, then drew back. He stood. Every movement unfolded with the precision of a man who hadn't forgotten a single thing he'd ever been trained to do. The chair didn't scrape against the floor, it yielded. The floorboards didn't creak. The air, somehow, felt like it was bracing. He walked to the back of the house, through a narrow hallway where faded photos lined the walls. One showed him in uniform. Another showed a tiny girl with a gap-toothed smile wearing a purple backpack, half her face smudged with jelly. Between the two photos was a shelf. A single stuffed fox sat on it. One ear missing. He touched the fox, then knelt and pulled up a loose floorboard. The case underneath was gray. Military issue. No biometrics. Just a coded latch and a faint layer of dust that seemed ashamed to be there. He opened it. Inside was a matte black rifle, disassembled with affection. Beside it, a pair of gloves, boots, and dog tags that read, Vance. Mason. Navy. Tier 1. Retired. The question mark had been carved in later. By him. He dressed without ceremony. The gloves slid on like memory. The vest cinched tight like an old oath. The rifle came together without hesitation, bolts snapping into place like punctuation on a forgotten sentence. He didn't pack food. Didn't take a comm, just the rifle, a knife, and a photograph, creased and worn. It showed her asleep on his chest, newborn. The caption, in a child's scrawl, "My daddy keeps me safe." He locked the house behind him, not out of hope, but habit. In orbit, the justified overkill still hadn't located him. Which was funny, because he was already en route. The ship they'd taken her to was the size of a city, bristling with defense systems, patrolled by 3 kinds of psychically bonded soldiers and an AI that once beat its own designer in 4-dimensional chess. Mason boarded it in under an hour. No alarms sounded. The first to see him was a sanitation tech in a pressure corridor. She blinked. He nodded. She returned it, dazed. An hour later, she reported the encounter. Her supervisor assumed she was sleep-deprived. She wasn't. He'd passed 14 guards. None of them remembered how. In the inner decks, security footage began failing. Not all at once, just slowly enough to be plausible. Mason used no jammers. No digital masks. He simply understood blind spots better than most people understood breathing. He found the air vents too small for a man of his size. That's how he knew she'd used them. She was small. Clever. She left signs. Crayon lines on conduit pipes. A purple bead tied to a bolt with dental floss. Her way of saying, "I'm okay. Come this way." She was following their rules. He was just enforcing them. Kriv, meanwhile, had deployed every available defense. Drones. Traps. The Shriekers, biomechanical hybrids bred specifically to mimic a loved one's voice, then bite your spine in half. None worked. The Shriekers encountered Mason in Deck G-12. All 3 units were found later in a utility closet, humming lullabies to each other. One was crying oil. Mason didn't leave wounds. He left suggestions. A senior commander found a note folded neatly on her desk after she had laughed off the danger at a security meeting. The note said, "Your children attend Tarsus School. Section 4B. Blue lunchboxes. Don't." She resigned 30 minutes later. None of it made sense to the Empire. They were used to patterns, retaliations, war conducted by committee and protocol. This wasn't war. This was personal. and that made it unstoppable. He reached cell block E with methodical silence. The guards posted there were young, fresh grown from the cloning moons, trained in precision and posture but not fear. They lasted 12 seconds. Not because they fought, but because they saw him. He didn't break bones, didn't fire a shot. He looked at them, and they stepped aside. The cell was empty. He didn't panic. He knelt, pressed 2 fingers to the floor, then smiled. Chalk dust. She'd drawn something. Under ultraviolet light, the faint image appeared, a fox, holding hands with a tall figure. Stars above. And a number. A room code. He stood and whispered, "You moved her. Good girl." Kriv received the report moments later. He hissed, tossed the datapad, and ordered a full lockdown. Every corridor, every transport pad, seal the AI core, lock the outer bay. Too late. Mason was already standing in the primary cargo hold, surrounded by silence and by fear. The crate he stood beside bore her scent, the exact mix of shampoo, peanut butter, and crushed flowers only a father could recognize. He placed one hand on the side. "She's close," he murmured. At that moment, a squad of elite soldiers entered the hold. They didn't announce themselves. They moved with discipline, flanking, weapons drawn. Mason didn't move. One of them spoke. "Identify yourself." He turned, slowly. His voice was soft. "I'm the man you shouldn't have made wait." They fired. 4 stun blasts. 3 smoke rounds. He didn't shoot. He moved. When they woke, they were cuffed to each other in a holding cell. Their weapons were disassembled and carefully stacked nearby. Each man had a sticker on his chest. It read, "Ask me why I'm grounded." Back in the cargo bay, Mason found the final trail. A stuffed fox, perched atop a crate. One ear missing. The same one she'd left on the shelf at home. He picked it up. It had a note attached. Crayon. "I'm in the room with the stars. The one with the circle window. I left Daddy's favorite." He smiled, turned, and disappeared again. Kriv was screaming now, throwing officers across the room. His command AI was cycling threat protocols but getting nothing useful. Every metric showed the same impossible figure. Probability of successful extraction, 0%. Probability of containment, error. Someone whispered, "What if we just give the girl back?" Kriv spun. "We can't. That's admitting weakness." The junior officer said nothing, but he was already drafting a report titled "The Cost of Arrogance." In the Starlight observation room, top of the ship, panoramic view, Mason found her. She was asleep on a cot, curled up with a makeshift blanket. Someone had at least tried to care for her. He made a note to spare them. She stirred, opened her eyes, smiled. "Hi, Daddy." "Hey, kiddo. Did you get my pictures?" "Every one." She reached out. He scooped her into his arms. Behind them, a camera blinked to life. He looked straight at it. "I've got her," he said, then crushed it under his boot. Far across the galaxy, in a boardroom of pale, sweating diplomats, someone stood. "We need to fix this." Another leaned forward. "What do we send?" The first replied, "Not a fleet." "Then what?" He swallowed. "A formal apology, a crate of Earth chocolate, and a sworn treaty." "Will he accept?" "I don't know," the man said. "But I know he's not here to talk." Back aboard the ship, Mason whispered into his daughter's hair. "You're safe." She nodded sleepily. "Daddy." "Yeah." "You were right." "About what?" "You said if anyone ever took me, they'd be sorry." He hugged her tighter and walked toward the exit. The interior of the justified overkill was designed to intimidate, which, for most species, it did. The ceilings loomed like cathedral vaults, the lighting was set to an aggressive amber, and the architecture echoed footsteps with a reverb calibrated to induce dread. Every corridor twisted subtly, meant to disorient. Every door was 8 inches thicker than necessary, just to say, "You're not getting out." Mason Vance walked through it like it was a supermarket. Security feeds didn't track him, not because he disabled them, but because they never caught him in the first place. Wherever he went, lights flickered a half-second behind. The AI kept reporting, in a voice steadily rising in pitch, "Subject not present. Subject present. Subject no longer present," on a loop that was beginning to make the technicians question if they were being pranked. Commander Kriv had turned purple, an impressive feat for a species with 6 green circulatory systems. He stood hunched over a holographic projection of the ship, each deck flashing red with "containment failure" blinking above it. His jaw clicked. His claws twitched. "Seal the starboard launch bays," he barked. "Lock down decks G through M. Release the phase walkers." A junior officer cleared their throat with the delicacy of someone who didn't want to be demoted by airlock. "Sir, the phase walkers were neutralized 10 minutes ago. They're currently humming to themselves in storage." "Humming," Kriv repeated flatly. "Yes, sir. Earth nursery rhymes." Kriv stared at the map again. The blinking lights. The silent hallways. The parts of the ship he no longer controlled. He had the sinking realization that he wasn't overseeing a hunt. He was hosting one. Elsewhere, Mason moved like a knife in fog. The air around him seemed to hush itself. He carried his daughter on his back now, her arms around his neck, her breathing steady. She had not asked a single question since waking. She didn't need to. Every step was deliberate. Not hurried. Not panicked. Just efficient. He checked every corner with a glance. Memorized every hallway without needing to stop. Left no trace, except for the occasional disassembled camera, or a note pinned to a wall with chewing gum. One read, "Almost there." The bounty hunters arrived at hour 2. 5 of them, all gleaming armor and cybernetic swagger, dropped into Corridor F9 with weapon systems so complex they needed AI co-pilots. They were professionals. They had reputations. And all of them were gone within 17 minutes. The only clue was their shuttle, which drifted into orbit hours later, meticulously packed with their gear, and a message burned into the hull. "Send better." Kriv watched the footage in silence, his claws twitching like antennae trying to find a better signal. "How," he asked quietly, "does a single unaugmented human bypass 200 years of military advancement?" The room was silent. Then someone, terrified of their own voice, said, "He's not bypassing it, sir. He's ignoring it." Kriv lost what remained of his composure. "He's one man with a projectile weapon." A fresh alert pinged on the bridge. "Com block. Level 4 security. Undergoing override." "What now?" Kriv hissed. The camera feed switched. A group of guards in the secure communications room stood frozen as Mason Vance typed calmly into a console. On the floor was a single note. "Sure." The feed cut. 12 seconds later, every interstellar channel lit up with a single message. "She is safe. I am leaving. You have one chance to stand down. Do not waste it." The message transmitted in every galactic dialect. Translated instantly. Felt everywhere. Kriv paced, frothing. "He's taunting us." "No, sir," said a small, sweating officer near the rear. "He's warning us." "Same thing." Kriv snapped. "Dispatch the Exo-Legion." "The Exo-Legion is hesitant." "Hesitant." "They've requested written clarification on whether this is an engagement or a suicide." Kriv pointed at the projection. "Then I'll do it myself." The bridge fell silent. Even the AI paused. "Sir," it offered gently, "you are squishy." Kriv ignored it. He stormed off the bridge, his personal guards scrambling to follow. Behind him, the crew watched the hatch close and began composing their resignation letters. In the maintenance tunnels, Mason paused near a junction. He placed his daughter gently on a ledge and knelt beside her. "You okay?" She nodded. "Are we going home?" Soon. Are they gonna keep chasing us? His hand touched her shoulder. Only if they forget what I am. She tilted her head. What are you? He smiled faintly. A memory with teeth. She didn't understand. Not fully. But she smiled too. He turned back and pulled a panel off the wall. Inside, a junction of wires. Pulsing, alive. He clipped two. Rewired a third. What's that do? She asked. He stood. Nothing. Then the ship lurched. Lights dimmed. Systems whined. Unless they try to follow us. Across the ship, emergency lighting kicked in. Half of the security systems collapsed. Internal NAV systems began rerouting officers in circles. In one hallway, a squad found themselves standing in front of a wall that read, "You're going the wrong way." He already knows. Kriv, armored and fuming, stormed into Cargo Bay 3. His elite guards formed a wedge around him. Lights flickered. The silence thickened. He walked to the center of the room. Stopped. There, on the floor, was a chalk drawing. A fox. And two footprints. One adult. One child. The door sealed behind him. From the shadows, Mason stepped forward. Kriv raised his weapon. Mason didn't. He simply said, "She's safe." Kriv snarled, "You can't win. We're an empire." Mason's voice was soft. Empires fall. He moved before Kriv could blink. The gun clattered across the floor. Kriv fell backward, landing hard. A knife was at his throat, edge gleaming. Mason leaned in. "This wasn't revenge," he whispered. "This was restraint." Kriv trembled. Mason stood. Walked away. Didn't look back. 2 minutes later, Kriv's guards found him on the floor, untouched. There was a note on his chest. "Next time, ask permission." The escape was unspectacular. One shuttle. One man. One child. They left the justified overkill without resistance. No one tried to stop them. Even the tracking systems looked the other way. Because the ship had learned something that day. You don't hunt him. He lets you live. If you're lucky. Mason held his daughter in his arms as stars opened before them. He didn't speak. He just watched the universe roll by, quiet as breath. Behind them, chaos. Ahead, home. And somewhere in between, the long silence that follows a mistake so enormous the galaxy needs time to understand what it's done. Stars streaked past the viewport in a blur of cold fire and ancient silence. The shuttle, unmarked and humming with borrowed power, glided across the void like it had no interest in being noticed. Inside, Mason Vance sat still, the kind of stillness that had nothing to do with rest and everything to do with readiness. His daughter curled against his side, small hand tucked into his shirt collar, breathing the slow rhythm of safety. He hadn't spoken in nearly an hour. She hadn't needed him to. Behind them, the justified overkill remained intact, but changed. No one followed. No one dared. Not because of what he might do next, but because of what he had restrained himself from doing already. Across the Galactic Council's upper chamber, the fallout began with whispers and ended with screaming. This was supposed to be a routine acquisition. No protocols were broken, technically. "Technically," growled the Brandnik war ambassador, his voice layered like grinding metal. "You abducted the child of a Tier 1 human operative and expected a memo in return?" "It was a test case," someone stammered. "A species resilience trial." "A what?" spat the representative from the Levon Nebula, shaking their bioluminescent tendrils. "You tested a SEAL's patience? Congratulations. You just declared war on patience itself." The chamber erupted. Treaties dissolved mid-sentence. Delegations canceled cultural exchanges. 3 governments declared neutrality on the spot. The Intergalactic Commerce Guild froze all contracts involving Terran personnel until ethical engagement procedures could be reevaluated. No one asked if the child was okay, because they all knew she was. and that meant he still might be watching. Mason didn't care. He had no intention of following the broadcasts or listening to the apologies that had already begun to circulate, crafted by panic-stricken AI spin units and galactic PR liaisons with quivering claws. The galaxy would recover, but it would remember. He piloted the shuttle through the dense silence of a Terran atmosphere, touching down in a place with no satellite coverage and no bureaucratic reach. The house was just as he'd left it. Porch slanted. Mailbox tilted. The fox on the shelf still missing one ear. She ran inside before the engines fully cooled, dropped her bag, and headed straight for the fridge. Mason followed slower, eyes scanning the perimeter, the tree line, the sky. Not because he expected a threat, just because he always had. Old habits weren't habits. They were instincts wearing time like a jacket. He unpacked the rifle slowly, wiped it down, cleaned the parts that didn't need cleaning, oiled the bolt. Then he slid it back into its case and carried it into the yard. The same patch of earth waited beneath the cottonwood tree. He dug the hole by hand. 6 feet down, same as always. A ritual of quiet, calloused labor. He placed the case inside, covered it with a folded cloth, and filled it back in. No marker. No words. Just a memory sealed in dirt and the knowing silence of a man who hoped he'd never need to open it again. When he returned to the house, she was on the couch, coloring. A drawing of a fox and a figure beside it. This time, the figure wasn't holding a weapon. Just holding hands. He kissed her head and sat beside her. "Do you think they'll come again?" she asked softly. "No," he said. "Because they're scared of you?" "No," he said again. "Because they're scared of what I didn't do." On the other side of the planet, an encrypted transmission whispered across secure diplomatic channels. A meeting was already underway. No names, no faces. Just titles. Coordinators. Planners. Strategists. "We underestimated the humans." "No," said the voice from the shadows. "You underestimated one." "What now?" "We adjust." "Do we retaliate?" Silence. Then, "We apologize. Sincerely. With gifts." "Will that be enough?" A pause. "It better be." Back in orbit, the justified overkill drifted under automated repair. Kriv had been reassigned, publicly promoted, privately exiled. He now served as the ambassador to Terran cultural affairs. His job was to watch old Earth films and report on possible psychosocial trigger metaphors. His last report was a 200-page analysis of a film called John Wick. He hadn't slept since. A new directive circulated quietly through military channels across 5 systems. Do not engage Terran offspring unless invited, especially if they offer you a crayon drawing. A bounty hunter posted a public apology video. He cried. A warlord from the Clax Dominion offered a peace treaty written in blood ink and delivered it with trembling hands. And in a quiet council on the moon of Kirill 4, an alien strategist reviewed Mason Vance's file. Everything redacted. Everything terrifying. She closed the file and leaned back. "Never again," she muttered. Her assistant nodded. "Should we flag the SEAL program as a galactic threat?" "No," she said, staring at the stars. "We flag fatherhood." Meanwhile, on Earth, Mason Vance sat on the porch swing. The boards creaked beneath him in the dusk. His daughter laughed inside the house. There was soup on the stove and a new drawing on the fridge. He watched the horizon until the stars came out, then closed his eyes. Not to rest. To listen. And for the first time in a long while, there was nothing coming for them. No bootsteps in the dark. No sirens buried in code. Just whine through trees and the distant, precious sound of peace. It wouldn't last forever. But it would last now. And that was enough.